Captain Braddock. Captain Braddock. Ready.
Tonight's case, titled 2 for 1, depicts graphically how a normally honest businessman may, under the stress of business and financial pressures, resort to what appears to be a means of obtaining easy money. Now, this particular case first came to my attention when a somewhat baffled desk sergeant ushered George Collins into my office.
I want to give myself up.
I see. Well, suppose you sit down, Mr.
Collins. George F. Collins.
Now then, Mr. Collins, suppose you tell me what it's all about.
Well, my name is Collins. I said that before. I operate the dye works in Glenport. That's in Glenport, of course.
Just a minute, Mr. Collins. If you're from Glenport, well, you know anything you say may be used against you. Sure you wouldn't want to give yourself up to your own police department?
Well, it didn't happen in Glenport. It happened here. That is, most of it happened here, except for on the train.
The train?
Yes, you see, I was the man with the suitcase. The one your detective confiscated, the one with the money?
One of our detectives confiscated your suitcase. Are you sure?
Yes. Only I told him it wasn't mine because of the counterfeit money. You see, I denied ownership at first because I was frightened. Naturally, I didn't want to go to jail for counterfeiting.
Well, normally, I'd say that this was a job for the Treasury Department, transporting counterfeit currency. But now I'm not so sure. Suppose you tell me the whole story.
I've already confessed my guilt. I've admitted it was my suitcase, that I was in possession of counterfeit notes. All right, what more do you want? Can't you just put me in jail and get it over with? I've broken the law, and I'm prepared to pay the penalty.
Sit down, Mr. Collins. Have you ever been in jail before?
Oh, of course not.
Of course not, and I venture to say you've never committed a crime before. Or a little jaywalking, maybe. But for the most part, you've behaved in the manner of a decent, law-abiding citizen. A credit to your community, is that right?
Yes.
And now, for the first time in your life, you stepped out of line. Why, Mr. Collins?
I needed money.
I see.
I needed money badly. I had no way of getting it. Of course, I knew it wasn't honest, but, well, that's why I'm here now, because of my conscience. It won't make much difference now. I'm ruined. Soon be out of business anyway.
Mr. Collins, the law isn't as cold, ruthless, and one-dimensional as it may sometimes seem. Whenever a man commits a crime, no matter how slight or apparently insignificant, we'd like to know why. If it's intentional, not inadvertent, we'd like to know what brought it about. Part of our job is to learn these things.
I'll tell you anything you want to know.
Good. The whole story, then, Mr. Collins, right from the beginning.
Well, I operate a dye works in Glenport. That's a small town about 800 miles from here. But my equipment's getting old, and lately it's been giving me trouble. As a matter of fact, I've been operating at a loss for over a year. I had to take out a first mortgage about 6 months ago. But the potential is still good. The town's growing rapidly, and I knew if I could just get a hold of some new equipment, well, that takes capital. I don't have it. So, a few days ago, I came here to the city.
Thank you.
Well, it's just as I had thought. You see, Mr. Collins, inasmuch as we already hold a first mortgage on your plant...
Yes, of course I know that, but I've been regular in keeping up my payments.
Well, that isn't the point. I have to consider the feasibility of issuing a second loan. After all, the risk is primarily ours. We've no wish to take over your dye works. That's not our line of business. Our business is making loans, when and if the circumstances warrant it. Now, in your case, well, you've admitted yourself that the bulk of your equipment is obsolete.
Yes, of course, that's just...
I know. That's why you want the loan. And we'd like to help you. But $10,000 is the best we can possibly offer on the basis of your existing security.
$10,000 is no good. I've got to have 20. Look, Morgan, surely my word must be worth something. I've spent 15 years building up that business. But if I don't put in those improvements...
Your word isn't negotiable, Mr. Collins. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that's how we have to look at it. Now, if you want the $10,000, I'll have the papers drawn up and you can call for the money tomorrow afternoon.
All right, if that's the best you can do, but it's not enough, I can tell you that. Somehow or other, I've got to get my hands on twice that amount.
Well, I wish you luck.
That was it. The Empire loan had been George Collins' last hope. his reason for coming here at all.
Down? Terribly sorry.
Quite all right.
Let me help you.
Oh, no, really.
Well, it's the least I can do to make up for my clumsiness.
It was all my fault if I'd only been looking where I was going.
Seems to be everything.
Oh, I hope so. I guess so, anyway. Well, you don't recognize me, do you, Mr. Collins?
Oh, well, the face is familiar.
I guess you had much more important things on your mind. I work for the Empire Loan Company. I'm Mr. Morgan's
Of course,
secretary.
certainly that's where I've seen you.
I couldn't help overhearing your conversation with Mr. Morgan. I'm so sorry things went so badly for you.
It was a relief for Collins to meet at this troubled hour someone as sympathetic and attentive as Cynthia Martin. Under Cynthia's prodding, Collins poured out the history of his financial difficulties. She seemed to think it would do him good to get it off his chest. And for a while it worked. After all, he was a single man, and Cynthia was a very attractive girl. After dinner, at Cynthia's suggestion, they went to a supper club.
What did I tell you? Nothing like music and a dance floor to soothe the furrowed brow.
Dr. Martin, if your medicine came in bottles, the demand would outrun the supply. Shall we have another drink?
Just what I had in mind.
Waiter, two of the same, please.
Well, let me in on it.
Oh, I was just thinking about us being here after the way we met. What the gang back in Glenport would say. If I told them about it, they wouldn't believe me. After all, who does meet a beautiful girl that way? Except maybe in storybooks.
Well, it isn't as though we were perfect strangers. We do have the Empire Loan Company in common.
Yeah.
What's the matter? Oh, how stupid of me. Just when we're having such a wonderful time, I have to go ahead and spoil it, reminding you of your business troubles.
That's not your fault. No sense in brooding over it, I guess.
There's only something I could do. If I only had some money of my own.
Well, it's sweet of you to be so concerned for me. But this is something I'll have to work out for myself.
Wait a minute. Maybe there is something. I know a man, Paul Johnson. He's in investments of some sort. Anyway, I know he handles a great deal of money.
Well, and you say?
Well, I'd have to talk to him first about you, and then he'd probably want to meet you. But it is an idea. It's worth looking into anyway.
Yes, certainly.
Suppose I get in touch with him the first thing in the morning, and then I'll call you at your hotel the minute I know something.
Cynthia, I don't know how to thank you. You don't know what you're doing for me.
Yes, I think I do, George.
Seems innocent enough, doesn't it? A troubled businessman and a sympathetic girl. A girl who is concerned enough about his welfare to go out of her way to help him. Put yourself in George Collins' place. You couldn't help but be impressed by such warm-hearted friendliness, could you? But you'd soon have cause to regret it. In a moment, we'll follow up the case of 2 for 1. Now, let's follow up the case of 2 for 1. George Collins passed a restless and uneasy night. Bright and early the following morning...
Hello. Oh, it's you, Cynthia.
I've contacted that friend of mine I told you about, Paul Johnson. Mm-hmm. He's very anxious to meet you, too. Do you suppose you could make it for lunch today? I think you should talk to him right away. Good, George. Good. Let's make it at Bannister's, shall we? That cocktail restaurant where we met? Good. 12 sharp. Fine. Bye. Oh, he's probably tied up in a business conference. Usually he's very prompt.
Well, maybe he's not coming.
Oh, there he is now. Over here, Paul.
Please sit down, Mr. Collins. How are you, Cynthia? Sorry I'm late. Just some coffee, please. I haven't much time.
Well, you thought it over, Paul? What we talked about?
One thing I'll say about Cynthia, she doesn't believe in beating around the bush. Well, let's get to the point, Mr. Collins. Cynthia's given me all the background I need about Glenport, your dye works, and the bad luck you ran into with the Empire Loan people. Yes?
Oh, my goodness, look at the time. Oh, no, please, don't get up. I'm due back at the office right now, but you two go right ahead. I'll see you this evening, George. Goodbye, Paul.
Bye, Cynthia. If Cynthia's told you about me, she's probably told you that I have no security. I'm afraid that's not quite true, Mr. Collins. Cynthia tells me you can borrow $10,000 from her employers, as I understand. Yes, but I need $20,000. And I believe I have the solution for your problem, Mr. Collins. An investment, with no speculation involved. An investment?
Oh, don't shy away from the word, Mr. Collins. You know the old saying, it takes money to make money.
Yes, but an investment?
All depends on how badly it's a thing like that. If you don't mind a small element of mystery, I wish you'd accompany me to my place of business. I'm sure we can work it out there.
Well,
Mr. Collins, there's another old saying, I'm sure you've heard of it. He who hesitates is lost. Shall we go?
was it necessary for us to come here?
Yes. Even Cynthia doesn't know the exact nature of my business. I'm letting you in on this only because you're a friend of hers, and, well, I owe her a favor. But I want you to treat this with the strictest confidence. And if for any reason you reject my offer, I want you to forget it. Forget this place, everything. Is that agreed?
Yes, certainly.
Good. Right this way, Mr. Collins. Surprised, huh? Try and overlook the air of mystery. Certain precautions are necessary. Oh, Mr. Collins, come over here a minute. I've got something to show you. Beautiful, huh? Well?
It's real, isn't it?
Mr. Collins, what do you think?
Oh. Oh, I see. That's the investment you were talking about.
Well, as I said before, it all depends on how badly you need that $20,000.
Well, I'm an honest man, Mr. Johnson. Anybody in Glenport will tell you that. My business reputation, my social reputation are perfectly clean. I've never done anything crooked.
I envy you, Mr. Collins. What consolation will that be when you've lost your plant?
Well, it would be like stealing.
Stealing? It'd be a crime to pass it up. Look at them. The workmanship, the quality, the fine detail. Go ahead, examine them.
I don't know. It seems very good. But
Seems
I
good.
don't know.
It's perfect. What do you say, Collins? Is it a deal?
Well, suppose I were caught.
Suppose you were. That's a risk you've got to take. You never get something for nothing, you know. But you won't get caught. Not with stuff like this.
I don't know. I just don't know.
2 for 1. 20 grand for 10. That's my deal. Take it or leave it. You want to save your dye works? Okay. Now, the way I look at it is, if you want something bad enough, it doesn't make any difference how you get it.
But it's not honest.
You mean it's not honest? It's a business transaction, pure and simple. You go to Empire, get 10 grand. You come to me, give it to me, I give you 20. It's that easy. How do you know these bills aren't genuine? Are you supposed to be an expert? Look, Mr. Collins, if it'll make you feel any better, why don't you make a round of the banks in the morning? Take these bills with you. Tell them you think they're counterfeit. Ask them to examine them. And if one confirms it, just one, mind you, the deal's off. Fair enough? If they won't confirm it, Mr. Collins, why, this stuff's good enough to pass on a treasury agent. How about it?
I'll think it over.
Collins started out the following morning with scant enthusiasm and considerable trepidation. As Johnson had suggested, he began making the rounds of the banks.
Yes, sir. What can we do for you this morning?
Well,
Yes?
I wonder if you'd take a look at that for me. Tell me if it's all right.
You think that it might be counterfeit, is that it?
Yes, that's it. Do you mind?
Oh, no, not at all. Well, that's all part of our job. Yeah, spotting bogus currency. Would you mind waiting just a moment?
Thank you.
Wherever Collins went, it was the same story. The bills were pronounced absolutely legitimate. His confidence grew and his scruples shrank. If it was that easy, if the engraving was actually that good, well, who is he to look a gift horse in the mouth? That afternoon, he visited the offices of the Empire Loan Corporation. There was no question in George Collins' mind as to what his next step should be.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10,000.
Collins, it's all yours.
Yes.
You want to back out, Collins?
No. No, it's hard enough making up my mind. Now that I've decided, I'm going to go through with it. I'm not going to pretend to like it. You know, I was thinking I ought to get rid of this as soon as I can. A bag full of money
Not
like this.
here. In Glenport. You try to get rid of that stuff here and you'll be up your neck in cops.
What?
How do you think we've been able to operate here all this time without running afoul of the law? This is our headquarters, our point of disbursement. But we don't try to circulate our products locally. That'd be asking for trouble. That's why we make deals with men like yourself. We've got agents all over the country.
But you didn't tell me that they were on the lookout here.
They're always on the lookout. But you've got nothing to worry about. Here, you're a stranger, subject to suspicion. But in Glenport, you're a respected businessman. Once you get there, you'll be okay. Understand, the sooner you get this suitcase back to Glenport, the better off you'll be.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cynthia. Well, of course I was looking forward to tonight, our last evening together before I leave.
Well, I'm just as disappointed as you are, George. I simply can't just run off and leave her. She's a helpless invalid, you know. Well, I know. She's anxious to meet you, too. I've done nothing but talk about you ever since we met. Uh-huh. George, what time does your train leave this evening? Maybe I could see... Oh, that's terrible. 8:27? Well, I can't possibly see you off. The doctor's due any minute. Mm-hmm. Of course I'll write. And Auntie sends her best. Don't you, Auntie? Yes. Oh, George, you'll be sure and let me know how your business deal comes out, won't you? Bye.
The next night, I caught the 8:27 train out for Glenport. I don't mind admitting I was scared to death. I had stored my luggage in the baggage car, all but the suitcase containing the money. I didn't dare let that out of my sight, not for so much as a second. It seemed as if every eye in the car was on me, as if every passenger knew what was in the suitcase. Then there was that terrible wait for the train to pull out. And all the time, I kept thinking about what Johnson had said about my being a stranger here and subject to suspicion, about police being on the lookout. And there was no way of telling. For all I knew, the coach might be crawling with detectives. I don't know how long I sat there like that. Looking back over my entire life, I can't recall moments more painful than those spent on the train that night. I knew he was a detective as soon as I saw him. There was something in the way he looked at me, or rather, in the way he pretended not to look, that gave him away.
Is that your suitcase?
Beg your pardon?
I said, is that your suitcase?
Well, what earthly business is it of...
A simple question requiring a simple answer, yes or no. Is that your suitcase? Well?
Well, I...
Come on, mister. What's your problem? Let's have it. Is that your suitcase?
No. Someone must have left it here by mistake. But it's not mine. I never saw it before.
You're sure of that?
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, it must belong to somebody on this train, and I intend to find out who. Sorry if I scared you, mister.
In a way, I guess a man is owned by his conscience. Anyway, a week hadn't passed before mine drove me back here to your office. Well, I guess that's about all.
Except that now you're a sadder and somewhat wiser man.
That's right.
McGuire, send in Harry Juergens along with Exhibit A. You know, it's a good thing for us, Mr. Collins, that you decided to give yourself up. Otherwise, we might never have solved this case. That the officer who confiscated your suitcase?
Yes, he is.
And I'm quite sure you recognize this.
Yes.
Well, the pieces are finally beginning to fall in place. I'm afraid, Mr. Collins, that this has the earmarks of an old European confidence game. It's been worked for years with success in France and Spain. Now, usually there are three of them. A girl who is staked out in a bank or lending office, the agent, in your case, Paul Johnson.
Confidence game? Well, I don't understand. And you said a girl. You don't mean Cynthia.
I'm afraid I do. After all, someone had to fatten you up for the kill and lead you up the steps to the slaughterhouse.
How could she? I don't
Now,
see...
remember I said there was a third member of this little organization? Well, Mr. Collins, he's standing right beside you. Harry Juergens. A very slick operator, they'll have you know, with a string of aliases as long as your arm. Up till now, he's had more charges than convictions. But we'll remedy that this trip.
Well, then he wasn't your man...
No, hardly. We picked up Harry a few days ago on an old warrant. He had this suitcase, and of course he wouldn't tell us how he got the money. I guess he figured the water was hot enough, isn't that right, Harry? All right, Sergeant. Well, you must be pretty confused, Mr. Collins. I suppose you're wondering what it's all about.
Yes.
Well, really, it's not quite as complicated as it seems. Now, as you noticed, Cynthia knew exactly what train you'd be on. They had to know that. They couldn't afford to lose this suitcase. And they counted on your being just frightened enough to fall for the phony detective routine. And they knew you'd jump at any chance to deny a connection with the suitcase. And they thought they also knew that you wouldn't come to us with your story.
Well, I don't see... How could they be sure of that?
They had you just where they wanted you, thinking that you'd involved yourself with a gang of counterfeiters.
Thinking? What?
10,000 of this is still yours, you know.
Yes, but what's the good of that? It's counterfeit.
Is it? Why do you suppose they worked so hard to get this suitcase back? They had your 10,000. Seems to me it would have been simpler to run up some more bills.
Well...
And why do you suppose Johnson was so anxious to run the risk of submitting these bills to expert examination?
I don't know, to prove their quality, I suppose.
Scarcely. You see, Mr. Collins, these bills aren't counterfeit. They sold you genuine United States currency. That's why they had to get back the suitcase. After all, you don't suppose they were going to let you swindle them, do you? Cynthia Martin and Paul Johnson were apprehended, and along with their partner in bunco, Harry Juergens, were convicted and sent away to serve nice long prison sentences. George Collins will get his money back, too. Oh, he may have to sweat a little for it, but all things considered, he'll get off lightly. However, this will not put an end to this particular racket. Only you can do that. Remember, this is only one case. Multiply that by the thousands of people who are yearly blinded by the glitter of easy money, and you have some idea of what we're up against. Closing this case now, or rather the courts will, but there'll be others, because that's the way the world is built. Remember, there are people who can slap you on the back with one hand and pick your pocket with the other. And it could happen to you.